Hi there. Many others like you have asked, what is the difference between the three law types in the Old Testament? You have the question, the Bible has the answer, and we can help you with it. The law of God given to Moses is a comprehensive set of guidelines to ensure that the Israelites' behavior reflected their status as God's chosen people. It encompasses moral behavior, their position as a godly example to other nations, and systematic procedures. In an attempt to better understand the purpose of these laws, both Jews and Christians categorize them as moral, ceremonial, and judicial laws. Up first is moral law. The moral laws, or mishpatim, relate to justice and judgment. These ordinances are based on God's nature, being holy, just, and unchanging. Their purpose is to promote the welfare of those who obey. The value of the laws is considered obvious by reason and common sense. The moral law encompasses regulations on justice, respect, and sexual conduct, and includes the Ten Commandments. It also includes penalties for failure to obey the ordinances. Moral law does not point people to Christ. It merely illuminates the fallen state of all mankind. Still on the topic of moral law, modern Protestants are divided over the applicability of mishpatim in the church age. Some believe that Jesus asserted that believers are still bound to these ordinances. Others, however, understand that Jesus fulfilled this requirement. His teaching to love God and love others is exemplified by the moral laws. While freedom from the law is not a license to sin, we are not specifically bound by mishpatim. The next category of law is ceremonial law. The ceremonial laws are called hukim or chukah in Hebrew, which literally means custom of the nation. These statutes seem to focus the adherents' attention on God, with instructions on regaining right standing with God, remembrances of God's work in Israel, specific regulations meant to distinguish Israelites from their pagan neighbors, and signs that point to the coming Messiah. Some Jews believe that the ceremonial statutes evolve as societies evolve, effectively changing God's expectations of how his followers relate to him. To be clear, this view is not indicated in the Bible. Of note here, Christians are not bound by ceremonial law. Since the church is not the nation of Israel, memorial festivals do not apply. Galatians 3 explains how Christians are not required to sacrifice or circumcise, and there is still debate in Protestant churches over the applicability of the Sabbath. As Romans 14:5 showcases the believer's freedom, each one should be fully convinced in his own mind. The third and final, judicial civil law. The Westminster Confession has the category of judicial or civil law. These laws were specifically given for the culture and place of the Israelites and encompasses all of the moral law except the Ten Commandments. This includes everything from murder to restitution for a man gored by an ox, and the responsibility of the man who dug a pit to rescue his neighbor's trapped donkey. Quite the spectrum there. Since the Jews saw no difference between their God-ordained morality and their cultural responsibilities, this category is used by Christians far more than Jewish scholars. In conclusion, the division of the Jewish law into different categories is a human construct designed to better understand God's nature and define which laws church-age Christians are still required to follow. All of the law is useful for instruction, and nothing in the Bible indicates that God intended a distinction of categories. Christians are not under the law. Jesus fulfilled the law, thus abolishing the difference between Jew and Gentile. A final scripture, so that in himself he might make the two into one new man, thus establishing peace, and might reconcile them both in one body to God through the cross. All right, that answers your question. What is the difference between the three law types in the Old Testament? We would definitely encourage you to watch another video. Our website is all about answering questions, so you might find one on the right that YouTube thinks you would like. On the left is our latest upload. Go ahead, check one of them out, and thank you again for watching.